Welcome to Transforming the Toddler Years, a Core 4 parenting podcast blending soul and science-based strategies to empower pandemic moms like you, raising kindergarten-ready kids. I'm Cara Tyrrell, your host, a lifetime lover of littles, girl mom, early childhood educator, and conscious parenting coach who truly believes that how we connect and collaborate with our kids in the first 5 years is how we raise world-ready kids who will change this world. Today's guest is really special because you all told me that you wanted to talk about digital stuff, technology for your tinies, getting out of this pandemic, and how we can move forward to help them reestablish a healthy relationship with technology. So Nicole Rawson is with us today. She's a digital wellness expert and the founder of Screen Time Clinic, the largest international network of certified digital wellness educators helping schools, corporations, and parents like you make smart choices about online time and how to flourish in the real world. Her kids are now young adults, but they still struggle with digital addictions from excessive time as youngsters in front of screens. They weren't part of the COVID generation, but the explosion of edTech and the novelty of iPads and iPhones that were thought to have these amazing benefits, but we didn't know the impact on early brain development and addictive properties. And now we do. So Nicole's mission is to help new moms flourish in the digital age without regrets, eyes wide open, no judgment here. But now that we know better, we can choose to do better. Enjoy this conversation with Nicole as much as I did, and be sure to reach out if you are ready to try a digital detox in your home. But before we dive in, I would love if you could do me a favor. Could you scroll on down, rate the show after you listen, and leave a review, ask a question, suggest a topic. This will help me know how to better serve you, who to bring in. It will also help friends find us, other moms who need to be hearing what we're talking about together. Nicole, thank you so much for being here with us today. This topic is relevant 20 years ago, and it is more relevant now. We need you more than ever. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So why don't we start with your personal journey? We know as moms, when we see struggle, we dig deep, and if we can't find the solution we're looking for, we create it. And you did that. So tell us about that journey.
Well, it's kind of a twofold journey in that I was fortunate to be a school teacher, started when I was even 21 years old. So I kind of felt like I was an expert parenting person when I had children at age 26, and was like, okay, I got this. And felt like I was a really proficient mother, and quit my teaching job actually to raise them for 6 years, and then went back into teaching. But during that time where I was home with my children, I actually used baby Einstein as a very smart babysitter that I really thought. And at that time, it was, everywhere, promising to make babies smarter and the new thing. And it was, you had to put a disc in a computer even. There wasn't even an iPad back then. And then when the iPad came along, I was like, oh my gosh, my parents gave us one for a present. And I was like, wow, now my son, who's 6, really loves Angry Birds, and he's going to be so smart and so amazing. But turning into a little bit later, age 12, 13, 14, when they go to middle school, and we saw academic struggles with him in elementary school that turns out, in hindsight, were due to digital addictions and what they refer to now as virtual autism, because he wasn't able to focus in elementary school, and he was only drawn towards things on screen learning in elementary school, which is not the best way to learn. And we'll talk about that. So long story short, he ended up with a very severe digital addiction, gaming addiction that started with baby Einstein and the overstimulation of that media, continued on with Angry Birds, Minecraft, Roblox, and then all the first-person shooter games. I noticed this at age 14 when I went back to teaching. Also, my students were so distracted. My own son was struggling in school. And I started learning about the association between screen time and their mental and neurological health. So I did do a full digital detox with him, took it away. He learned to fly. We took flying lessons instead, try to replace that dopamine with something really good and meaningful, find new passions. And that lasted a couple of years. But today he still struggles with it as an adult because it was always his fallback coping mechanism. And actually, I was a single parent for almost all of those years. And his father felt like gaming was something he was entitled to be doing, and it made him happy and allowed a lot of it at his house. And when he turned 18, he opted to go to his father's house and finish up that last year of high school as a gamer at his dad's house. And first year of college, got into a great college, quit his rowing team, flunked out of the first semester of college, and has been struggling ever since. So it's just speaks to, my mission in that I don't want any parents to have to go through what I am still dealing with, having a digital addict that could have been prevented had I known better when he was very little. And so that's why I love the work that you're doing. Because, parents, we work so hard to make our kids happy and we want to do the best that we can. And we all think we're doing great. And, comparing ourselves to others, it's really hard to figure it out. But if there's something that we can do to prevent a possible adverse event in the future, I think all parents would really appreciate, taking a look at what they can do better and making some bigger, small changes, whatever they are capable of that time.
Wow. Thank you so much and I know that you tell this story a lot, but every single time it's just so open and real and vulnerable and raw. And those early decisions that felt really strong and empowering, like owning that they turned into something that was actually a long-term damaging effect. That's so hard.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you for being there in that way for us.
I almost don't always tell that story often because a lot of times I give presentations with, the older kids in middle school and high school years. And at that point, there's not much you can do other than really take some steps to mitigate it. But for younger parents and the age group that you're really helping inspire, hearing a personal story is really what sparks that common ground and common interest. And gosh, I just really hope to connect on that level with so many parents.
Well, let's dive into the good stuff then.
Yes.
So talk to us about the neurological development and the impact that screens have. Because what I hear parents say to me is, well, they're watching it and they're fully engaged with it and they're not distracted. So I know that they're focused.
Yes.
Tell us why it's actually the opposite.
Right. And it's just such a shame because big tech has inundated us with this idea that learning online and learning through screens is a really great way of learning. And for us being older, reading through a screen or listening to a lecture through a screen, that is an effective way of learning. But 2D and 3D learning, which in the little years, that is the type of learning that they're learning to figure out, like, what shape is their face and where do their shoulders start and their arms begin, and colors and even math online, 2 + 2 = 4. There is absolutely no research that shows that that is effective. And actually, there's a tremendous amount of research that shows that it doesn't translate into real life learning. So if you're looking at a bowl of apples and oranges, and the child is learning about that online, and you ask them then to go and pick out an apple out of a fruit basket in real life, they cannot determine that that is the same 3D apple in real life that they saw on a 2D screen. And this is well researched and just not very mainstream knowledge because, like you said, we see them being really engaged. And they must be soaking in something if they're so captivated by it, right? Like you said, it captures their attention and their little wheels must be turning, but the research shows that it's only the reward pathways, that primitive part of the brain that is the first to develop, is getting overstimulated. And that's why it's just feeling good. They call it like cocaine melon. And it's just like a drug, even though it's a behavioral neurological phenomenon that's happening. And it's so accessible that, unlike if you gave your baby Benadryl to go to sleep, well, you don't want to give them too much or they might not wake up. And we're not supposed to give them Benadryl anymore because they'll have a chemical dependency to it later in life, just like alcohol and rubbing, giving them all these past things that we did to little kids, not knowing better, but it's because it creates an addiction later in life and they become dependent on it, like a binky or a blankie. And digital media is so much more captivating because their brains are very visually stimulated. So I know that was a long answer, but it's really that visual stimulation, whether it's balls bouncing on a screen or it's 2+2 or just a strobe light effect. They don't care. It's the visual stimulation that's overstimulating their reward pathway.
So it sounds like what you're talking about is similar to our experience as adults. And a lot of adults had ended up with a further technological addiction as a result of living through the pandemic. And we look at our screens and the little hearts fly up from the story we posted and we get that oxytocin boost. And we look at our screen and there's 412 likes on that particular post and we get that oxytocin boost and we just want more and more boost. And you're saying that when kids are watching Cocomelon or Daniel Tiger or even Bluey, that, this edutainment industry is really just entertainment that is causing pathways in their brain to give them that feels good again, that feels better, I want more.
Exactly. Without even having the quantified likes and the comparison and all that really sophisticated addictive properties that are built into video games and social media. So just the watching of the very visual cartoons. And that's why when even we were children, when TV first came out, everybody was very concerned about it because it did have the same effect. It wasn't widely studied as much, but there was a natural stopping time. The programming didn't go on all night long. It wasn't as visually stimulating. But still, and PBS became unregulated in the 90s. And so the content became more commercialized. And so the other hand to that is not only is it overstimulating our littlest, most vulnerable, because their brains are very neuroplastic and all the neurons until age 7 are fighting to connect. So if all those neurons are the reward pathways, that's what creates the little digital addicts for life. So we really want to keep their learning offline and in nature and very slow, because anything that's commercialized or very visually engaging is taking away from their true creativity sources in the other parts of their brain, because they're only seeing that a dinosaur goes roar, or what a Cocomelon or a Roblox character does. And they're not actually seeing like a baby doll that has no association with any sort of programming. What does that baby doll do? Or what does this weird looking animal do, or anything like that? That's the true creativity. And nothing online has been proven yet, and disproven for, like you said, almost 20 years now. So they do a good job of trying to convince us otherwise, unfortunately.
So interesting to hear you say that, because I'm in a preschool every day and I listen to these kids during their creative play time. But what I'm hearing are screen bites and sound bites of the television shows that they're watching come into their creative play and drive what their bodies are doing and what the toys in front of them are doing and what they think their friends should be doing. And it's fascinating to watch. And I feel like That's not true creative play, right? Creative
It's
play
not.
comes when you pick up an inanimate object and you pretend it's something else even.
Right. And you're interested in many things. So the other problem is that then those children, when it's free playtime, they're seeking out other children that can talk about the same thing. And then when we're introducing gaming, Roblox, Minecraft, Angry Birds, whatever those little games are, those are even more something to talk about than just cartoons. But you see it even with cartoons, and it dictates their choices of who they associate with and what they talk about. And it just puts this veil on them of narrow focus. And that's the newest studies that's come out in the last 2 months that we previously did not know, is that it increases OCD 13% for every 1 hour you allow your child to watch media, not gaming, just media. Every 1 hour, 13% OCD chance. That is a huge chance. If anybody said you had 13% chance of winning the lottery or dying or anything, you would be either really excited or really concerned and try to avoid it. And that's each additional hour is even more. And so that's when you're seeing in preschool that they're talking about it. It's creating this OCD obsession with this character. And it's cute for parents because then you can buy all the birthday theme stuff and you know exactly what to get them and what tickles them and to feed that fascination, but it's actually harming them.
It's so hard to be a parent in this day and age.
Yes.
This is one of the variables, right? Parents
Yep.
are giving birth in the last few years or so to this true digital age, the first truly digital generation. My kids and your kids are 18 and 20, and they had opportunity, but they didn't learn through technology, right? It wasn't part of their curriculum at school.
Yeah.
It wasn't literally a lifeline the way it is today. And I talk all the time about using technology as a tool and not a toy, and just as a guideline.
Right.
If you're questioning, if you're a parent and you're in a situation and the child is losing their mind and you're in public and like you add up all the different variables, just asking yourself, am I about to hand my child the phone because I need it to be a toy or I need it to be a tool? And if that can just be our first question, maybe we can make different decisions based on the different places and spaces and availability that we have to meet our kids' needs in different ways.
Right. And is it worth the risk? Also, it is a tool, but as much as binkies and blankies are so addictive and so hard to remove, if you're handing over that tool every time you sit down to dinner and taking your children out to dinner and using the phone, I guarantee you're doing that at home also to calm them and to cope them. And it's really harmful when you're pairing events and places, and it causes eating disorders in littles when they have to have a device and able to be calm enough to feed themselves. And just to make smart choices, don't take your children out to dinner if you're not comfortable with taking them up and walking them around or letting them fuss. We don't have to raise perfect children. They can be uncomfortable and they can make noises and they can make messes. And you shouldn't be ashamed of that at all. But trying to calm them using a screen because you're worried that someone, is going to pass judgment on your fussy baby or toddler or, messy toddler just isn't worth the risk to them, to harming them. So just to make smart choices and swaps and really say, how can we dial back? And there's a lot of books now, like this digital detox one. That's the other misconception that I want to make sure we talk about is it's very easy to make big changes. Generally, it's free to take away all screens for 2 weeks. And if you take away it all for 2 days to 4 days, you'll see really big changes right away. There is fussiness because that's the digital addiction and the detox period where they're not used to having to make different changes and feeling different ways with their bodies. But in 2 weeks, People are amazed. And there are lots of families that don't use screens as pacifiers and educational tools. So that's the other misconception, is that you have to. Everybody's doing it. Your child's going to be left behind if they can't read by the time they get into preschool, and they can't write, and they don't know how to read a book on a screen. And there's nothing that shows that it gives them an advantage. And learning comes in leaps and bounds, as you know, from a teacher. It happens very quickly. Sometimes when they're a little bit older, because their neurological pathways are more able to make those connections quicker.
Absolutely. Hey, Mama. Cara here, just hopping in to say how impressed I am by you and your dedication to raise a whole child who will be world and school ready. You know that parenting is a job, a J-O-B job, and it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to know what you don't know. And that's what I'm here for. My Transforming the Toddler Years course is currently closed, but I am accepting one-on-one clients who are looking to make massive transformation inside their home. If you're feeling overwhelmed, disconnected, and that you're in survival mode all day, every day, but you wake up determined to be intentional, calm, and connected so that you can help your child thrive, I can help. Schedule a complimentary connection call with the link in the show notes to share your parenting journey and your current struggles. Let's see how we can work together to help you transform the toddler years. Over here at Core 4 Parenting, we are constantly talking about, and I'm constantly teaching, that actually of the 4 readiness areas to be a great learner and a good friend, and I want to get into the human being aspect of this too, when you go to school, I believe that early cognition and showing how, quote, smart you are is the least important of the 4. Social emotional skill development, interpersonal skill development, and physical body awareness and control are the 3 that I really help parents observe, understand, and create opportunity to practice. So when technology is involved, tell us, are kids creating a, quote, relationship with it? And if they are, is it to the detriment of learning how to be connected in a human way?
Right. You're absolutely right. And I 100% agree with, unless those areas are covered and worked on and practiced. I mean, just the practice of sitting and being bored and be able to look at things and occupy your mind, counting the number of leaves on a tree or the tiles on the ceiling, rather than reaching for a device. Or it takes practice, and they're going to be fussy, and it's messy, but I love what you said before, like when the toddler years, when the teen years, like when they're little, they're learning how to move their bodies, control themselves, and getting that practice is essential. And when you have screens, they're bonding with the screens, they're bonding with the devices, whatever content is on TV. It's so unfair, right? Even though there's no learning going on screens, that's a meaningful way. There's meaningful emotions, really, really strong emotions that are evoked from this reward pathway being stimulated. So even though it's not helping with their reading fluency or their math or their head, shoulders, knees, and toes, they're falling in love with that screen more than they are their parents, because that screen is much more engaging than their parents are. It's much more engaging than any little friends are that they're going to meet. And it is subliminally changing how they view themselves and what they are experiencing and drawn to. So it's actually a very, very dangerous relationship that, and giving a child a phone then when they're young and expecting to be able to stay in touch with them and that'll bring you closer. It actually has the opposite effect. It pulls families apart. It gives distance. It removes all those opportunities to actually have real conversations and see your real facial expressions and really be able to touch someone and go in and have a conversation rather than just texting and then opening that door to the other detachments and other bonding, because it is oxytocin, all the other hormones. It's not just dopamine that this reward pathway gives out.
Yeah. I think I know what your answer is going to be to this, but I need to ask it anyway because I opened the forum and said, I'm meeting with Nicole and she's this digital expert and please ask your questions. So the social emotional aspect I just said was really vital. And parents know that, right? Conscious collaborative parents who are being intentional about the way that they engage with their kids, they know that. The songs, the music that are in shows like Daniel Tiger or even Coco Melon for that matter, that are social emotional songs about feelings and being appropriate with our bodies and using our words. Why don't those work? Because that is what they're supposed to be teaching, right?
Well, again, it goes back to why is this also necessary to teach right now? Teach it after 7 years old when their neurological pathways are finished being connected. Songs are fine, sung by real people, listened to without screens. But the visual stimulation that is causing overstimulation when you are looking at a screen connected with a song, that's creating all these other side effects that you don't want. So if you like those songs, play them on a device, and then they can imagine who's singing them, and they can imagine what that creature looks like, who's singing them these songs. And songs, repetitive songs, that's contributing to the OCD too. We want to be reading a large breadth of books. We want to be introducing large numbers of words and connecting with them as humans, not creating these catchy songs that they probably don't even really know what it's about. But then when we see them reading or we see them say happy, then us as parents say, oh, they know that they're happy because of this song or because they did this program or they learned to read because they read it online. I hear that a lot, like, oh, my child is a great reader and she would have never learned to read if it wasn't for this program online. And it's not important that they become these academic experts so young, and B, they learn them in different ways than the online ways. So children will learn in spite of you. We always love to say that as teachers, like do your best, parents, because they pick up things everywhere. But on visually stimulating on screens is research, tired and true, not safe.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. If you love that song and it feels really good to you, then you do the singing. I make up songs all the time I call them transition songs for toddlers because we need to move to the next thing. But for some reason, it's not happening. And then you start singing and you make it up and you make the words, the action that you're asking them to do and how to. It just works.
Yeah, and that's tied with a real life thing that you're doing. And recently, even the Alexa for kids and those audio devices are now being sued by the FTC also because they're collecting all the information on your children and all the verbal recognition of the words, they're listening to everything. And then they're giving you suggestions too of what song may play next. And just collecting this data, which doesn't seem, I've always been an open book. I'm like, well, they're going to find out about it anyway. What possibly could be so wrong? But it's not just about one child. It's about when you put this metadata together and suddenly the computers know your child better than they know themselves and better than you know them. So then when they are age appropriate and they're starting to play something, they already know what engages and how to addict your child into different games. They already have this data collected, and engaging humans, usually children, starting with children, those are their best consumers of online content. So the more they know earlier, the more they can target their content to know what engages your child and to addict them earlier and keep them addicted. Their entire life is their goal because that's what drives revenue.
Right. And for these companies, for big tech, it is a revenue game. And for us, it's raising really amazing human beings who understand who they are and how they need to go out and engage with others in the world. Now, I did say a bit ago that they're not just the COVID generation, right? So they're dealing with lack of milestone achievement in many other areas because of being born into a world that was not engaging the way it used to begin with. Now we've got the digital piece, and everybody talks about digital citizenship, that that we have to grow up as really good human beings with values and morals and abilities to empathize and be compassionate, but we also need to raise really good digital citizens. What does that even mean?
That's a great point to make. So that is big tech marketing ploy. That is verbiage that you're hearing. The Common Sense Media is one of the largest nonprofits, 19 million a year, and they're teaching under 12-year-olds how to prepare to use TikTok and Snapchat. It's still on their website, and they're about ready to have a reconciliation come their way. They will be in lots of trouble with that. They are sponsored by big tech. If you look at who their main sponsors are, this is all a ploy of big tech to tell us, and we hear this all the time, oh, well, they're going to have to use it sometime. Why don't we just let them use it now? And like, if it makes them happy, what's the harm? And the harm is that even though your child is going to be drinking alcohol at some point, we do not want them drinking it soon, and we don't want them drinking it with their parents or their underage peers, because they will have a struggle with alcoholism their entire life. And digital addictions and what it does to the neurological pathways in the mind are no different. So we don't want to be bamboozled by big tech saying we need to have digital citizenship. They need to learn, because there's no online friendship learning. All of the good parts of technology that we usually see as adults are actually not as many as there are harms. And for children, they can't differentiate between posting and having likes and who's a real friend and who's not a friend and who's a toxic friend and who's a fake friend and who's a groomer that's actually going to lure us away and who's going to alienate us from our parents, and all this crazy complex stuff that even as adults is very hard to discern. And the algorithms are very strong. So since the pandemic, the algorithms and the AI has gotten tremendously strong because of the amount of users and because of the younger users too. So as parents, we just need to take a step back and not be ashamed of the choices we've made in the past, but do take a big step forward and think like, how can we change this? And start with a little digital detox and make these big changes, because this is going to be just like the tobacco industry, seatbelts, alcohol, cocaine used to be used for toothaches and common ailments. And there's nothing worse than parental regret and looking back and saying, God, I wish I would have known. We don't drink when we're pregnant for that reason, because you just don't want the blame and the, oh my gosh, what if I wouldn't have had that second glass of wine or that first glass of wine?
I am so glad you just brought
So
up.
there shouldn't be any mom shaming. If you want to do better, do better. And we're not here to mom shame. I hate that word, because you do want to try to do better. And this is science. Like, this is real stuff that's been very well researched for 15 years now. And we're on the cusp of lots of regulations. But if somebody doesn't want to have their kid playing Minecraft anymore, and Facebook is so hard as a parent. You just have to find your group that's going to support your beliefs. Don't try to convince others. Don't try to be that person out there. There's so many great screen-free groups, screen light groups, positive parenting like you're doing, that just keeps you focused and around good people, and, take it and run with it, because it's totally worth it.
I am so glad that you kind of put this together in a beautiful bow for us. Moms who are listening out there, a lot of dads listen to this podcast too. So I'm going to talk to you as well today and just say, you did what you had to do to survive a period of time that nobody knew was going to go on as long as it did. And the stressors that you were under in so many different areas of your your life meant that you used technology with your little people, and we're just going to leave it there. We're going to let it go, and we're not going to beat ourselves up about it anymore. It's time to make some new decisions in your family. Nicole is here to help you do that. And I am here to help you with the strategies that you need, both soul and science, so that you can move through the transition without as much emotional turmoil for both you and your kiddo. One more important thing I want to touch on before we wrap up. You talked about the fact that it can look like kids need a diagnosis, right? Mm-hmm. And as classroom teachers, you and I know that diagnosing a child before the age of 5 or even sometimes the age of 7 for things is something we just don't do because we don't have enough data and long-term data for how long they've been alive to know if we're appropriately diagnosing. So what are some of the things that it looks like kids need to go be tested for and labels applied that really came from overusing digital media?
Yes, great thing to talk about before we end here, because digital media overuse, digital media addiction, it's a spectrum of that. And so when we're talking about overuse, addiction, the level, it can mean a lot of different things for different children. And like males are 3 times more likely to be addicted to all substances, including digital addictions. So they are more highly susceptible. Premature babies are more susceptible to addictions, including digital addictions. And it's not just the child, it's the home life too. So living between 2 households, having a married household with stress, having parents that are stressed out themselves. Children are using it when they're able to have access to technology. They will use it as a coping tool. So we want to remove that coping tool. We want to remove that harmful substance, screen time, and really protect them, because when you do a digital detox, it does take away 50 to 100% of these symptoms that we're seeing, unable to sit still. So that's behavioral disorders, defiance disorder, where you're being defiant and angry. That's your reward pathway, overstimulated. ADHD, unable to pay attention except to your screen, right? That is caused by virtual autism. It's caused by overstimulating the reward pathways. OCD is very well studied to be very highly correlative. Sympathetic nervous system disorders. So if you have a child who's having stomach troubles all the time, headaches all the time, eyesight problems, I mean, it is unbelievable how much is connected to screen time for littles, because their brains are so highly stimulated that reward pathway is the first thing to develop. So they only have that. That's why there's the terrible twos. They just want to do what they want to do. That makes them feel good. You know, it drives us crazy, but that's the part of their brain. And the rest of the brain takes 25, 26 years to develop. But this reward pathway causes all of these problems that then you get into school, you can't focus, you can't behave, you can't have any empathy, you can't sympathize, you can't talk well. You only have a pointer finger. You can't grasp well when you're littles. So we're seeing a lot of occupational therapists that can definitely point, especially when a parent brings a child in having trouble and the child's on the screen coming into the appointment, or at a doctor appointment, they can't sit with the doctor without being on a screen. If a screen is being used, it shouldn't be used at all under 6, honestly. But if it's being used on a continual basis, that is bonding, and that is contributing to these disorders that really last a lifetime. And this has been well studied in China, India, Singapore just put out a big longitudinal studies. A lot of the overseas countries have great access to data because they have less privacy concerns. But they are publishing this data that is very compelling, but has also been written about 12 years ago. there's many good books on our website by PhDs and neuroscientists that have been talking about this for years. So hopefully we'll see a big change in our government policies in America, because other countries do have protections and we still don't. And it does pit parent against parent, which is really sad also.
Oh, there's so much here. Do you have time for one more question?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. So I had this question come through and you just kind of touched on it a little bit. So I wanted to extrapolate it. Moms say to me, well, I don't let my child have the device. I'm on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
It's not for them. I'm on it. I don't give it to them. So it's not their screen time. Talk to us about secondhand screen time and what just merely the act of that phone being a physical divider between parent and child does.
Yeah. I was thinking about that the other day because we do talk about this quite often. And I was trying to think of a personal example that I could use too from long ago. Because when you're on a screen, you're taking away that attention from others in the room and you're modeling something that is technically unhealthy. Although, we don't want, it is a thing of do as I say, not as I do, because we have developed brains and we do have jobs and we do have responsibilities. So we're not asking parents to be a screen-free household and lose your mind while you're protecting your children. But we just want you to be intentional, just like you wouldn't be over drinking, or if you smoke, you wouldn't be smoking around your children. To be intentional when you're around them, try to reduce the time. If you have to take a call, or do you really have to text when you're around them? Like, can you just wait until you have a time blocking time? We do a lot of adult digital wellness presentations also, and time blocking. So you're not constantly on this hamster wheel feeling that you need to respond to everybody immediately is actually a sign of a toxic work culture now too. So we want to give parents, you can give your permission to be present. Give yourself time to relax and just sit with your children, or have a meal together. Don't feel obligated, because it does take their attention away. And for my personal example, one of my sons, when they were little, I had a job where I had to be on my phone a lot and responding to people. And he would say, why are you always smiling when you're on your phone? Because, sometimes it would be funny what people would text back. And I realized, like, when I'm interfacing with him, I'm always a little frustrated with what he's doing. And maybe there weren't all these oh, you're so cute, you just flooded the kitchen again times. So they do notice, why are they making these faces and finding this so happy? Like, every time you pick up the phone, it makes you happy, but not every time that you look at me do you look happy. And that's hurtful.
What an amazing example. Wow.
Yeah.
So many layers to this. I hope that people are going to walk away with just one thing that kind of sticks, right? Gets a little earworm in there and says over and over, okay, I have one thing. So I know that you have detox programs. Take just a minute and tell us about them. And if people are feeling ready to take some action, how they can find you.
Yep. At Screen Time Clinic, we have a whole network of different educators all over the world, actually. So you can go and look at their profiles, see where they're located. I'm in California. A lot of them do virtual. I mean, it is a tool. We do a lot of online teaching and connecting, and it's a wonderful tool for adults and good support. And we help parents. We do a lot of presentations on the educational side with schools. So if you're compelled to say, you know what, I really want to start this in my school, contact us, because we do presentations for schools, youth groups, churches. And then for parents, we want to be the helper in your family too, and take the stress off of you having to be these experts and know exactly how to do it. It's honestly not that hard to do a digital detox. You just take everything away and struggle through the first days and then embrace different routines. But sometimes you need a little help figuring out okay, well, what's the next step then? And they're making a fuss. Am I really going to be able to get through the next day? If you need more hand holding, we can do that too. And then we also help structure alternatives. So even today, I have this little Cosmo wristwatch that is a great alternative than a smartphone. And then we have, Gab phones for kids that are much safer than iPhones. We have Wi-Fi routers at the home where you can be on your computer in your room and the internet can be turned off all over the house. So there's all these tips and tricks that we talk about when we do the presentations for schools too. But for littles, it's best just to dial it way back, have that digital diet take place, and then reintroduce it like a peanut allergy or nut allergy or something you don't really know what's affecting your child in their diet. Take it all away and have a 2-week or 30-day detox, and then introduce it back a little bit. And parents are so smart. They see right away, like, oh, wow, I never knew that was the cause of that, but it really is.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for being here today. I just heard, I heard on the radio today something that made me think of you right before we were about to do this. And it said that school systems are struggling intensely now with kids using their phones in school. So they did something about it. But now because of the smart watches that don't have to be connected, like your phone doesn't actually have to be right there. The kids have the upper hand again. So
yeah, we always want these to be like in a backpack or, don't put them on a toddler running around or a 6-year-old, but.
Yeah. So we have so much more knowledge thanks to you and all the tools on your website about how to help set our kids up for success when they do go out into the real world. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's really hard. So parents have a lot of kudos coming their way for all the little wins and getting them to bed on time, and sleep hygiene is so important that screen time erodes. So any little change or big change that you can do, you'll be happy you did.
Until our next episode, stay mindful and proactive as you transform the toddler years.